Historically, it was a usual morning of 14th March 1931, when we were fighting to liberate our country under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. But simultaneously, it was an unusual day in the history of Indian cinema. The day is marked as a milestone in Indian cinema, as the first talking feature film Alam Ara was released in Majestic Cinema Bombay, now called Mumbai. Alam Ara is a love story between a gypsy girl and a rich guy, which was directed by Ardesar Irani and produced by Imperial Theatres. The first film took the audiences by surprise and they became hysterical, so much so that the police forces were called to control the crowd. There were 7 songs in the film and they all became popular overnight.
खान बहादुर आरदेसर ईरानी उन्होंने पहले ये टाकी फिल्म बनाई, इसमें फादर का रोल पृथ्वीराज जी ने किया था.
Tanar single system camera, recording image and sound simultaneously, revolutionized the way Indian films were shot.
बहुत हंगामा हो गया था, लोग समझ ही नहीं पा रहे थे क्या हो गया. और तब कलकत्ते से साइकिल आते थे, यहाँ से सुरेंद्रनाथ BA LLB आते थे, मोतीलाल थे. पहले सारी एक्टिंग वो अपना क्या कहते हैं ना, स्टेज ही होती थी.
क्या रोज की तरह आज भी आप फूल तोड़ने आए हैं?
हाँ रामी,
मंदिर के आसपास बहुत से गरीब लोग रहते हैं. ऐसे छोटे काम के लिए उन्हें आज्ञा कीजिए. ये काम आपके लायक नहीं. खूनी.
मैं खूनी?
हाँ, तो खूनी. मेरे पिताजी का खून तूने ही किया चांडाल. मुझे सब पता लग गया.
पता लग गया ना? ठीक हुआ. धर्म में दखल देने वालों को मैं ऐसी ही सजा देता हूँ, चाहे वो राजा या रंक कोई भी हो. नहीं, मैं उसे जबान दे चुका हूँ. मैं जाऊंगा, मैं उसके पास जाऊंगा. अब क्या हाल है?
क्या हुआ था?
आपके हाथ से पूजा की सामग्री गिर गई थी.
हाँ, हाँ.
सोने का बंगला, चंदन का जंगला, विश्वकर्मा के द्वारा, विश्वकर्मा के द्वारा. सोने का बंगला, चंदन का जंगला, विश्वकर्मा के द्वारा. अति सुंदर प्यारा प्यारा, एक तो बंगला बने न्यारा.
Indian cinema is popular for its candid dialogues, melodious songs, and extravagant dance. Looking back at the earlier days, it is hard to believe that between 1913 to 1930, films were silent.
The silent cinema was never as such silent. It was always accompanied with sound, but live sound. Music was always going on. A tabla player, a singer, a violinist, flutist would be present in major screenings of films. Minimum you would require in a small town even would be at least a tabla player and a violinist. So the films already had a dimension of sound, music was added. If there was a chase sequence, the sounds of the horses and the feet, running feet, was imitated on the tabla, and so on. They also sang and spoke.
मामूली पिक्चर जिसको कहते थे, just average picture, वो 5,000 रुपए में पिक्चर बनती थी हमारी, और 10 दिन या 11 दिन में पिक्चर तैयार होती थी. हमारी पिक्चरें बनती थी तो 6 रील तैयार हुआ तो थिएटर में भेज देते थे वो. तो 7वां रील एडिट हो रहा था, एडिट हुआ तो फिर साइकिल में दूसरा रील भेजते थे और 10वां रील लेबोरेटरी में तैयार हो रहा था। इस तरह करके पिक्चर तैयार होती थी, शो होता था, फिर उसके बाद साइकिलों से एक शो से लेकर दूसरे शो के चले जाते थे और वहाँ पिक्चर दिखाया जाता था। और सेंसर की बात बताऊँ आपको, उस ज़माने में हमारे यहाँ सेंसर बोर्ड ऐसा था कि कोई ऑफिस वगैरह नहीं, इम्पा कोई चीज़ नहीं। ये 1929 का जिक्र है, 1929 का। तो वहाँ पे वो बस आपने आके शो देखे और स्लाइड के ऊपर उन्होंने लिख दिया कि ये नंबर सो एंड सो और ये पास हो गया, उनकी फ़ीस वहीं देते थे, चले जाते थे। फिर दूसरे शो में वो लगाते थे और पिक्चर हमारा चलता था, सेंसर हुआ, इस तरह का ज़माना था।
And between reel changes, most theatres had only one projector. There would be items. There would be a qawwali or a comedy sketch, and then the next reel would begin.
Most of these films were mythological, and it dealt with our ancient stories commonly popular in the society.
All the major genres that we identify with the mature talkie film in India
Were developed already in the silent period. Of course, the mythological, the social, the crime film, even sensational melodramas were made at that time. Unfortunately, most of those films are lost. 20 odd films we have is all that we have left of the silent period. But from the publicity material of that time, posters, reviews from magazines and so on, it was a thriving film industry with stars, very accomplished and brilliant directors like Babu Rao Painter, Kanjibai Rathod, Homi Master. Our origins of Indian cinema, the beginnings of Indian cinema in the silent cinema were auspicious. There were brilliant technicians and brilliant creative people working in our silent film industry.
They had studios, but the studios were all open on the top. You know, they were not fully closed because they depended upon natural light. You know, very little artificial light. Because most of the silent films were shot outdoors.
पहले तो कच्चे स्टूडियो थे, बिल्कुल लाइटें नहीं थी, ऊपर कपड़े का ये डाल के शेड ला के रिफ्लेक्टर से काम करते थे। इसके बाद आस्ते आस्ते लाइट्स आई, लाइट से तो फिर स्टूडियो के अंदर घुसे।
लाइटें हुआ ही कहाँ करती थी, लाइटें ही नहीं थी ना। नीचे कुछ अपना मिट्टी का लिपा वगैरह ऐसे थे और ऊपर ये नीचे खंबे डाले हुए थे और ऊपर क्या है, दो तरह के पर्दे थे, एक ब्लैक और एक वाइट, और रिफ्लेक्टर होते। रिफ्लेक्टर का लाइट कम ज़्यादा करने के लिए वो ऊपर के ब्लैक और वाइट उससे कम ज़्यादा करते थे लाइट।
Two things I would emphasize about the speciality of Indian silent cinema, which in fact influences the talkie period too, early talkie period perhaps more. There has always been an emphasis in formal terms on frontality. The darshan syndrome, you know, when you go to a Hindu temple, the main thing of attention is the idol, is the icon. And it is hidden from you and then it is revealed to you. So exchanging of the look between the idol and the spectator. So things are organized in a sort of frontal, direct manner. Angled shots are not emphasized. So frontality is extremely important in Indian silent film. And this combines with the influence of proscenium theatre, Parsi theatre. certain conventions of Parsi theatre are directly taken over into silent cinema, and perhaps even more directly taken into early sound cinema.
It becomes almost like a photographed stage play. So it was not cinema.
And the subjects of the Parsi theatre were carried on, and the Natya Sangeet theatre of Maharashtra, and similarly in Bengal, of the theatre in Calcutta at that time, was carried into the acting styles, into the way of decorating the set, generally presenting the mise en scène to the audience.
जब मैंने काम शुरू किया, आपको ताज्जुब होगा, मुझे 35 रुपए मिलते थे. उसके बाद 1 साल का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट शारदा में जब हुआ, तो उन्होंने 100 रुपए महीना देते थे, और 100 रुपए महीना लेके 12 महीने में 1200 रुपए में मैंने 5 पिक्चरें की. आप खुद सोच सकते हैं कि पिक्चर का कितने पैसे मिले मुझे. और 11 साल मैं हीरो रहा, साइलेंट से लेके टॉकी तक. मैंने 1000 रुपए कभी नहीं गिने साहब.
1 साल के लिए मैं परमानेंट थी, तो आप मानेंगे नहीं, मेरी तनख्वाह थी 150 रुपीज़. मधुबाला भी थी, तो हम लोग दादर स्टेशन पे उतर के फिर रंजीत में चल के जाते थे. वो मलाड से आती थी और मैं गिरगांव में रहती थी, तो वहाँ से हम लोग स्टेशन उतर के फिर रंजीत जाते थे.
That time film stars never stayed in big bungalows and things like that. They were poor film stars.
Actors became more important than ever before. They could speak. They began to have fuller and deeper personalities compared to the mime performances of the silent era.
साइलेंट के ज़माने में हम जो भी डायलॉग बोलते थे, बीच में कार्ड आया करता था, क्या बोल रहे हैं, किससे बोल रहे हैं, ये सब होता था. तो हम लोग क्या करते थे, जैसे हीरोइन से मुझे प्यार करना है, मैं कहता था, अरे उल्लू की पट्टी, तू कहाँ थी, तेरा कितना इंतज़ार किया, तू आई नहीं, खाना तो तैयार रखा होता, आई क्यों नहीं तुम. तो कार्ड में आता था, माय डार्लिंग, आई लव यू, आई एम वेटिंग फॉर यू.
The popularity of stars increased, the popularity of music, of course, which was new, of songs, and the Indian cinema began to play the role of a glue, of creating, the idea of identity of a nation, some kind of critical thinking about our colonial position. It was indirectly stated because the British were ruling, and the censors were alert on that. But it was already there, national consciousness, in the historicals of Sohrab Modi or the reform films of Shantaram. You will see the nationalist impetus and message already in the late 30s, very, very strongly. And Gandhiism, the anti-colonial sentiments, all these were expressed in a veiled, not to offend the censors a lot.
बदकारों को फना कर दो. फलक गुरूर में कर खाक में मिला के मुझे, न तू भी चैन से सोएगा यूं सता के मुझे.
Sound gave tongue to cinema. But what happened in India, it gave not one but many tongues. It became possible for the Indian filmmaker to make films in umpteen number of languages, in all the regional languages.
எப்படி என்ன அவ்வளவு கேவலமா நினைச்சுடாது. என்ன கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்கும் புருஷனை தவிர வேற யாரும் எனக்கு தொட்டுப்பட முடியாது. जाने दो, झगड़ा मत करो. जाने दे. नहीं, मका हंसते मजा का भागा कुंकू नहीं.
So apart from the national language Hindi, it became possible for filmmakers to make films in their own regional language, Bengali, Marathi here, and in the south, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam, and also other regional languages in Assam and everything. every language traces back its origin to the first language, first film, talkie film made in that language. Ayodhya Raja is supposed to be the first talkie in Marathi made by Prabhat.
Talkie Pictures played a major role in the rise of the studio system. Prabhat in Pune, Ranjit Movietone, Wadia Brothers, Minerva Movietone and Bombay Talkies were flourishing in Bombay, while New Theatre in Bengal, Vijaya Vahini Productions and later Gemini and AVM in South were actively involved in the talkies films.
पिक्चरें होती थी उस ज़माने में, कंपनियाँ पिक्चर बनाती थी और कंपनी के नाम पे चलता था. जिस तरह होता था कि भाई ये न्यू थिएटर की पिक्चर है, तो ये नहीं सोचते थे कि भाई उसमें साइकिल है या नहीं. न्यू थिएटर की पिक्चर आई, बॉम्बे टॉकीज़ की पिक्चर आई, रंजीत की आई या प्रभात की आई, कंपनी के नाम पे पिक्चरें चलती थी.
रंजीत अपने टाइप का पिक्चर बनाती थी, प्रकाश अपने टाइप के पिक्चर बनाते थे, वाडिया अपने टाइप के पिक्चर बनाते थे. किसी की एक पिक्चर पर चल पड़ी तो उसके पीछे दूसरे सब लोग पिक्चर बनाना शुरू करे, ऐसे कभी बात बनी है.
Films were selected on the basis of the studios which made them. So when they go and see a Bombay Talkie film, they know the entertainment will be there, but at the same time there will be a social theme. The same with New Theatre. So I think the selection in those days, the 30s and 40s to some extent, was done by which studio the film hailed from, which studio the film made. So that is the way they selected. Prabhat film had a clientele, and the New Theatres are also a definite audience all over the country, by the way, not only in Bengal. So even Prabhat had that kind of. So they built up institutions which maintain their track record of a certain commitment of cinema to the audience and to the society. They are not mere escapist entertainment.
Studio had to be soundproofed. So films were shot only in the night, in the early period, so that outside there are no traffic sounds and so on. And the camera had to be more static.
You have the sound man becoming the top technician in the set. Even the camera has to be set up in such a way that the boom and the boom doesn't come inside the frame. So all this technical devolution and people have to adjust to that thing.
Sound okay? Sound okay?
एक रूम बना हुआ रहता था जहाँ रिकॉर्डिंग होती थी पूरी. जब शुरू शॉट होता था तो पिन ड्रॉप साइलेंट होता था कि एक सायरन जैसे बेल बजती थी, उससे पता लगता कि अपना शूटिंग चल रहा है करके. एक बूम रहता था पूरा. हाँ, वो जो बूम मैन जो एक्सपर्ट होता था उसको रिदम से बूम चलाना है, उसकी शैडो भी नहीं आनी चाहिए कैमरा में.
रोल कैमरा, रोलिंग, एक्शन.
Some of the technicians were envious of the sound man. In the first 4 or 5 years of the sound period, people had too much of importance given to dialogues, and they were all have to speak their own dialogues. And if it is not okay, you have to take number 2 and take number 3.
बूम मैन का क्रेडिट उसके ऊपर था कि एक डायलॉग को दूसरा डायलॉग को पकड़ना, तो पूरा ऐसे जैसे क्रेन ऑपरेट होते वैसे बूम ऑपरेट होता था. यानी ट्रॉली चली, समझो ट्रॉली शॉट होगा तो बूम मैन ट्रॉली के साथ चलता रहता था. कोई गलती होगी तो वहाँ से साउंड रिकॉर्डिंग रूम से बोलता था कि इसमें गलती है, रिटेक, तो फिर रीशूट होता था.
कट. इज एवरीथिंग ओके? कैमरा ओके? साउंड ओके? अरे क्या हुआ भाई? बूम नीचे करो. एक बार दूसरे टेक करेंगे.
उस जमाने में रिकॉर्डिंग मशीन अच्छे होते भी नहीं थे, तो आपको विस्पर करना पड़ता था, चिल्लाए करना पड़ता. फिडोलोटोन था बहुत ही वीक, और फिल्म भी थे इतने सेंसिटिव नहीं थे कि लाइट बहुत लगता था, बहुत लाइट लगते थे, जिसको ब्रूक्स कहते हैं वो लगाते थे, एकदम गर्म, बहुत गर्म लगता था.
Until the coming of sound, 1931-32, the transition period is 3 years. Silent films were still made up to 1934. A majority of the films released in 1932, it's not realized, or 31, were silent still. It took all the studios a lot of investment and time to find technicians to move to sound. So there was a 3 years transition period. But once all these transitional things have happened, it is a commonly known fact. 85% saw in 1931 foreign films in India. 15% only the indigenous Indian product. This whole ratio within 5 years, from 1931 to 36, got reversed. 85% was, the audience was for watching Indian language films of South, East, Hindi, Marathi, the whole range of languages, and only 15% for foreign.
चौकी बरं चिरीमिरी दाखवतो
चला की भीते की का तुमच्या चौकीला
असां बेकदराना लाया अखियां दुख भरियां हाय दुख भरियां
তুমি বুঝবে না বুঝবার চেষ্টাও তুমি করো না কিন্তু আর তর্ক নয় দুখিয়া সহস্র প্রাণ দিয়ে গড়া একটি সাধনার জীবনকে আমাদের বাঁচাতেই হবে
Really the true rise of the Indian film is in the late 30s when different South Indian languages, Tamil particularly and Telugu, Bengali, though also in Bengal bilinguals were made, Bengali and Hindi, Bombay cinema, which was the dominant cinema even in those days, and Marathi cinema, and in Pune, Prabhat also made bilinguals, Hindi for the national market and Marathi for the local market.
Then in 1932, Prabhat produced their first talkie named called as Ayodhya Raja. In those days, none of the partners had any knowledge about the sound recording. Even they were not familiar with any sound recording equipments. That time my grandfather Vishnupanta Damle took a lead and he bought camera and recording system from Mumbai. He himself got educated about how to record the sound. Then the first talkie which was produced by Prabhat in 1932, he did the sound recording. We can say proudly that this is the oldest available talkie movie which we are having in India.
Other than providing a new kind of spectacle to the masses, the talkies resulted in recognizing the importance of the spoken language. Talkie films led to the popularity of not only the regional languages like Marathi, Bengali, Tamil, Gujarati or Assamese, but also our national language Hindi.
लेकिन जुपिटर की कसम हमने आज तक आप जैसा जाबाज और बहादुर बादशाह नहीं देखा
हमने भी बहुत से महाराज देखे हैं और बहुत से महाराजों को जीता भी है मगर तीर और तलवार की सौगंध आप जैसा ओछा और शेखी खुरास तक नहीं देखा
Agha Asher Kashmiri, for example, the famous Parsi theatre playwright, he was working non-stop for new theatres, you know, until dialogue writers like Kedar Sharma and in Prabhat Studio had its own dialogue writers. They came into their own. Early dialogue writing was done by theatre personalities.
Immediately after Alam Ara, Kalidas was released in Tamil and Telugu, marking it as the first South Indian talkie film.
जब टॉकीज आ गया तो एक जलजला सा आ गया कि फिर जब बोलने वाले जो थे ज़्यादातर स्टेज के थे.
The main criteria of selection of artists in the silent period was the bodybuilders or the wrestlers. So you can see Pahlwans and people like Master Vittal, whose most important thing is his body. But when sound came, all these stars were, had to lose their jobs because their voice was not in conformity with their body. Sometimes a wrestler type of body had a shrill voice.
Sound ready? 37H. Roll camera. Rolling, sir. Okay, action. कट 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 डायलॉग भूल गए
एक बार
चलो फिर एक बार एक्शन
चलो बाहर चलते हैं। अरे कट 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 कट, अरे कैसे?
They had to call the people already had made a name on the stage, theatre. The theatre, the main criterion for an artist is his voice.
आपको सीन मालूम है? जी हाँ। चलो एक्शन।
Quite a few careers naturally faded. Their voice was not suitable. But remarkably, quite a few careers continued and flourished in the sound period. Sulochana was the biggest female star of Indian cinema in the late 20s. She worked basically for Imperial and Kohinoor. She made very successful sound films, as did Gohar in the early 30s. But coming of the sound cinema meant a new kind of star also came in, the singing star. Most legendary, of course, is K.L. Saigal. He would not be the big star he was without his voice.
और जब सैगल साहब गाते थे तो आप अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं कि सड़क पे चलते हुए लोग रुक जाते थे। एक दफ़ा का जिक्र है कि सैगल साहब गा रहे थे, 10-11 बज गए थे, लोग वहाँ सिगरेट वगैरह पीते, धुआं हो जाता है, तो मैंने कहा किवाड़ खोल दूँ। मैंने उठ के किवाड़ खोले तो ज़रूर इस कोने से उस कोने तक कुछ 100 आदमी खड़ा हुआ था। पिन ड्रॉप साइलेंट।
Many stars of the late silent period, the Billy Moria brothers in Bombay, faded, but several also carried on. And then new stars also emerged, for whose voices, singing voices as well as voices, were successful.
All of them singing stars were there, you know. Kanan Devi, of course, in Bengal, and Amirbai Karnataki, who was a famous singer, Goharbai's sister.
Kanan Devi of Bengal, you know, she was a very minor, small-time actress in this late silent period. But with the coming in of talkies, she became a huge star. Same thing happened in each language.
गाना जो आज भी ज़रूरी है एक फिल्म में, गाने शुरू हुए।
लार लप्पा लाई रखदा, अड्डी टप्पा लाई रखदा, लार लप्पा लाई रखदा, अड्डी टप्पा लाई रखदा।
The songs, they clicked right away. It became the identifying feature of Indian sound film, that irrespective of genre, there will be songs.
जब बादल घिर घिर आएंगे, बीते दिन याद लाएंगे, फिर तुम ही कहो कित जाए नसीबों मारा दुनिया में कौन।
Film music, as we understand now, came from Lahore in a film called Kazanji, which was made in 1940, at the height of the war period. There, the Punjabi folk music, that is the dholak, that became the main instrument instead of the harmonium. Otherwise, the basic instrument in the 30s was the harmonium. But this dholak brought in a totally different rhythm to the film music, and that we can call it the Punjabi folk music. Ghulam Haidar was a famous music director who brought in a Punjabi folk music in a big way. And that became the trend of the Hindi films of the 40s.
साइकिलें रखते थे, साइकिलें होती थी, उसके ऊपर तख्ता रखते थे, उसके ऊपर कैमरा होता था, और वो साइकिलें चलाते थे लोग, और वो उसका ये अपने ट्रॉली शॉट।
सामने म्यूजिशियंस आ गए थे और सरस्वती देवी क्या करती थी, अपने मेट्रोनोम लिए देख लेते, टाइम फिक्स कर लिया, हाँ अब गाओ। तो मैं कहता हूँ मैं बन की चिड़िया बन के कट, सुर बेसुरा हो गया, फिर से शुरू करो। पूरा साहब एक शॉट में ले लिया जाता था एंड तक, फिर कहते कैमरा बदलो, उधर रहो डायरेक्ट। कैमरा बदला, वो तो मेट्रोनोम चलाया, कट 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 कट, हाँ ये टाइमिंग है, अब फिर से गाओ। तो इस तरह से हम लोग को पूरा गाना 3 दफ़े 4 दफ़े गाना पड़ता है, एडिटर काट के उसको ठीक करता था।
साउंड वॉज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट उस टाइम भी, प्रभात के टाइम भी, और लास्ट इवन राजकमल में जब शांताराम जी आए, ही वॉज ऑल्सो वेरी पर्टिकुलर अबाउट दिस साउंड सिस्टम। आई रिमेंबर ही वॉज टेलिंग मी कि उस टाइम जो लाइव गाने होते थे That was actually not recorded. It was already sung on the set with the artist, with tabla, harmonium, everything.
मैंने भी गाने की कोशिश की एक दफ़े, और प्रोफेसर देवदर म्यूज़िक डायरेक्टर थे उस ज़माने में। तो उन्होंने कहा कि जय ऐसी कोई बात नहीं, मैं तुझे गाना सिखा दूंगा। तो उन्होंने 1 महीना मुझे गाना सिखाया।
साउंड रेडी? रेडी।
तो जब टेक का दिन आया तो चले गए लोकेशन के ऊपर और मैंने गाना शुरू किया। तो पता लगा कि मेरी आवाज़ जो है मद्रास जा रही है और साजिंदे जा रहे हैं दिल्ली। पूछने लगे क्या हुआ यार? मैंने कहा मैं तो गा रहा हूँ मगर मुझे आवाज़ सुनने में नहीं आ रही है।
अरे जोर से बजाओ जरा, जोर से। साउंड रेडी? रेडी।
सब लाइव। आर्टिस्ट नहीं है, म्यूजिशियन नहीं है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। आर्टिस्ट के साथ हम लोग बजाते थे।
I can't tell you anything about Ala Mara, but as my daddy was involved with the picture, he was telling us stories, you know, like first of all, Imperial Studio was just near the railway line. So they had to do shooting in the night only. So every 2 minutes train used to pass. Na? And then musicians are like, you have to move around. Na? Wherever the artist mic is there, they have to go near that mic. Na? Otherwise sound won't come. And mic is only one microphone for all of us na, that time.
Action!
सर सुर नहीं आ रहा है, आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
थोड़ा पास। अरे आप लोग आगे जाओ, आगे आ जाओ। कैमरा सब क्लोजअप ले लो। लेंस चेंज करो।
एक बहुत खूबसूरत स्किट है जय के पास, जो पहले सुनाया करते थे, पता नहीं उनको अभी तक याद है या नहीं। वो कहते थे जब हम बॉम्बे टॉकीज में काम करते थे तो पोस्टर्स कैसे बनते थे आपको मालूम है? मैंने कहा जी मुझे नहीं मालूम। कहने लगे पोस्टर्स मैं साउंड इफेक्ट से बताऊंगा। मैंने कहा ठीक, जैसे मर्जी। तो उन्होंने शुरू किया, बॉम्बे टॉकीज प्रेजेंट्स देवी का रानी इन हमारी बात जयराज। हम लोगों का नाम यूँ आया करता था।
धीरे धीरे आ रे बादल, धीरे आ रे बादल, धीरे धीरे जा। मेरा बुलबुल सो रहा है, मेरा बुलबुल सो रहा है, शोरगुल न मचा धीरे धीरे।
इसमें में जो गाने हैं ना, गानों को आप देखेंगे कि वो गाना निकाल दीजिए तो स्टोरी थोड़ी कम पड़ जाती है। वो गाने में स्टोरी बोला जाता है, स्टोरी बोला गया, हर गाने में स्टोरी बोला गया, तो इसलिए वो चिपक गया गाने के साथ, स्टोरी के साथ ग्रिप कर जाता है।
Those days songs were like a part of a story. If you miss one song, if you go out for that song, you won't understand. You will say, what happened suddenly? Jump कैसा आ गया है स्टोरी में? There was no recording room, not like now. There were no music rooms. Either we used to record in the shooting sets, and then you have to tell them before get 2 दिन के बाद recording, either they'll put gunny bags and all just to make
acoustically little bit better than normal. No? There was one central studio where there's a air conditioned market is the central studio. Then Kada studio. Kada studio we used to record in a small room, little larger than this. It was supposed to be a rehearsal room. There is no recording booth. So there's a long cable going there, and there's a OB van, like a van, the recording van far away. No? When the magnetic came, it was good. No? We used to play, then walk there, hear the tractor. Wow, what happened? अच्छा लगा, वापस लेना है, नहीं लेना है.
His master's voice पे वैक्स का प्लेन रहता था, इतना बड़ा 78 RPM का. वो उसके अंदर वो रिकॉर्डिंग होके डम में जाके फिर बाद में रिकॉर्ड आता था.
They had only one round mic. One side is artist singing, the other side we are sitting, musicians. And suppose Dolok is there, you want Dolok little loud, तो अरे Dolok loud चाहिए, तो Dolok will have to get up like how you shifted the table, ना? You have to get up, shift this table, bring him little closer. और accordion आ गया तो accordion will have to go little closer. और वो mandolin soft चाहिए कि loud चाहिए, तो we have to adjust because volume is fixed, ना? According to the singer, the volume is fixed there, na? And I remember when I joined, there was no magnetic tape. So we used to record directly on the optical negative. Sound negative used to come like, and black and white developer they used to use, I think, for processing. Na? So if there's if frequencies vary during the recorder, there will be a speed variation like wow, fadla. So they used to call it bobble. तो आज गाना हो गया, पेमेंट हो गया, अरे कल नेक्स्ट दिन अगेन दे विल कॉल, अरे वापस रिटे गया, क्या हो गया, नहीं बोलता बॉबल आ गया. तो अगेन वी हैड टू गो एंड प्ले वंस अगेन, फुल पेमेंट अगेन सेकंड टाइम. एंड देन अभी 2-3 आफ्टर 3-4 days अनदर मैसेज के अभी HMV आने का, बिकॉज फॉर दिस वी हैड टू गो एंड प्ले. तो आई स्टिल रिमेंबर कि व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड दे वर कटिंग ऑन अ वैक्स मास्टर, ना. देन लेटर ऑन व्हेन द मैग्नेटिक केम, देन दे यूज्ड टू ट्रांसफर डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम मैग्नेटिक टू. सो सडनली आवर रिकॉर्डिंग, instead of average of 2 to 3 recordings per one song, it was 1 recording per one song.
His master's voice कोलंबिया, ये दो ही हम लोगों को मालूम था. तो उन दिनों में 35 mm का मैग्नेट टेप था और RCA मशीन मीनू कात्रक वगैरह करते थे, रिकॉर्डिंग करते थे. तो उस टाइम 3 ट्रैक थे, एक सिंगर, एक ऑर्केस्ट्रा और एक परकशन. वो 3 रिहर्सल करने के बाद वो भी कैसे आर्टिस्ट, लिरिक्स्ट और म्यूजिक डायरेक्टर, म्यूजिशियन सब एक जगह बैठ के रिहर्सल करते थे. ये करके उसके बाद जिस दिन रिकॉर्डिंग है तो 9 बजे हम लोग पहुंच जाते थे रिकॉर्डिंग थिएटर में. जाके एक आध 2 रिहर्सल किए, सब कुछ सेटअप हो गया तो फिर बाद में वो रिकॉर्डिंग करते थे. अब ये म्यूजिशियंस, आर्टिस्ट एंड परकशन, यानी ये तीनों इतना अटेंटिव होना चाहिए कि एक भी कोई मिस्टेक करेगा ना, then you have to start from very beginning.
When sound comes in, the early technology meant that you could not play back. It had to be sung directly for the camera. The musicians were off screen playing the music, even for the background sometimes. So that transition took about 5 to 6 years.
2 by 8, roll, rolling, and action.
With language comes in culture. The Bengali cinema, for example, or the Marathi language cinema, or the Kannada cinema, or the Telugu cinema, brought in the culture of those regions. So much of culture and identity is tied up with language. The primary medium of communication and education in India will remain, and I think it will remain for a very long time, the regional mother tongue languages.
The religious fanaticism started being questioned, and so that is why you can see untouchability is a recurring theme, not only from social point of view, but even in mythologicals. There is a film called Bhakta Nandanar, made in the south by Gemini. Basically, it is about not a high caste Hindu, and that is the conflict in the basic conflict in the film. Because he is from the Dalit community or the lower caste. So that kind of things where taboos were, eradicated slowly through these social reform films, both in the Hindi language and in the regional languages. And regional languages had a wide impact on the audience.
तुम बामन हो, मैं अछूत.
Achut Kanya of Bombay Talkies, directed by Franz Osten for Himanshu Rai, dealt with Achut Kanya. Well, you cannot have a more explicit title, Untouchability.
A film like Chandidas, made in Calcutta, both in Bengali and it is about a Brahmin priest falling in love with a washerwoman.
ब्राह्मण है और आचार्य जी के बाद इस मंदिर के सबसे बड़े आदमी हैं।
रामी, किसी का बड़े और किसी का छोटे घर में जन्म लेना ये मनुष्य की इच्छा और अधिकार में नहीं है।
Essentially, at the New Theatres, Calcutta, most of the problems of playback and pre-recorded sound were settled. And these were quickly followed by Prabhat Film Company in Pune, similarly the other major film companies in Bombay. But New Theatres really did the pioneering work as far as the soundtrack is concerned. But the really creative work came from, say, people like V. Shantaram, who used sound in a brilliant, brilliant manner. Things like Duniya Na Mane, which is about age difference between a widower and a young teenager getting married.
There is
a wonderful scene in which when he accepts his mistake, the sindoor, that is the kunku, is the symbol of marriage.
धर्माच्या नावानं तुझ्यावर लादलेलं हे सौभाग्य मीच नाही करतो.
Then he says, okay, I'm not going to put the sindoor as your man or your husband.
पती म्हणून नव्हे, पिता म्हणून.
That's, very interesting twist on the part of the filmmakers at that time. Shantaram is the real credit goes to him. So in a split of a second, the husband becomes the father.
Certain women characters began to be associated with Bharat Mata, the theme of the motherland.
People could see through those characters, and when the people rise against, there are a lot of films in the archive in the 30s and 40s, even the stunt films of J.B.H. Padia, have this recurring theme of people coming together and joining hands and fighting against, suppressive regime, suppressive rulers, and ultimately throwing it out. And then the local hero becomes the, messiah or the sort of liberator of the people. So that idea of ultimately you can, liberate the country from a foreign rule, from the colonial powers, that was inculcated slowly through film after film after film.
हर तरह की पिक्चरें बनती थी, सोशल भी बनती थी, एक्शन भी बनती थी, इजिप्शियन भी बनती थी, अलग अलग टाइप के सब पिक्चरें बनती थी, मैथोलॉजिकल बनती थी, तो सभी रोल करना पड़ता था और सब लोग सभी रोल करते थे। पहले तो ऐसा नहीं था कि ये रोल नहीं करेंगे हमारी इमेज बन जाएगी, फलाना होगा। ये उस वक्त हमारे ज़माने में कुछ नहीं था।
औरत होने से क्या मुझ में आजाद ख्याली नहीं है? औरत होने से मैं एक पति नामधारी मर्द की
These talkie films were made at the backdrop of the freedom struggle, and in many ways, filmmakers were raising such issues in their films.
औरत मानो काठ की एक बेजुबान बेजान पुतली है।
Filmmakers were hungry for stories, and wherever interesting stories are, they will adapt it.
Sound proved vital in giving the repeat value to a film.
In 1936, along with S. Vattelal, my grandfather Vishnupant Damle directed film Santa Tukaram.
Tukaram translated the Gita, basic conflict in the film, because what right has he to interpret Gita? Because he is from the Dalit community.
This is the first movie which got international award in Venice Film Festival in 1937.
In a land where foreign languages dominated the counsels and pleasures of the mighty for 1,000 years, film in a vernacular tongue, which the local man could understand, vested Indian cinema with a status it did not earlier enjoy.
तू त्याला माझ्याजवळ बसू देत नाहीस आणखी तूही त्याच्याकडे बघत नाही दिवसभर त्या दूध न देणाऱ्या म्हशी मागे असतेस
The growing demands of the talkie films led to the construction of new cinema halls, which could showcase and accommodate the incredible and unending number of audiences. The Indian society was also slowly opening up to the idea of this new kind of entertainment. And while cinema viewing was earlier restricted to a certain section of the society, the talkies brought the middle class as well to the theatres.
When the sound started coming into the film, it changed. Audience started listening to the audio or the sound. For them, they were having more impact of that particular film.
तेरे गरीब बाप ने दुनिया भर की चीजें दहेज में दी देख देख
पिताजी उस टाइम के पार्लियामेंट लोगों ने ये फिल्म वहाँ मंगाई थी. उस टाइम जवाहरलाल नेहरू वाज द प्राइम मिनिस्टर, सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल वाज द होम मिनिस्टर.
एक चीज तो देना भूल ही गए.
वो क्या?
कफन.
फिल्म देखने के बाद द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया हैज पास्ड अ एंटी डाउरी बिल इन द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. उसके पहले नहीं था. फिल्म का इम्पैक्ट जो क्या होता है लोगों पे वो मालूम पड़ता है उसमें.
Coming of sound in Indian cinema in 1930s is seen as a positive change, as it gave Indian cinema a distinct identity on the global map of world cinema. Even to this day, Hollywood films find it tough to penetrate the Indian film market. This has largely been due to the presence of film songs in the narrative.
With the sound films, because the voice is there, the ethnic traits are there, and the language is spoken, and greater naturalism comes in. So there's more direct communication in the sound period. And that's why in Indian cinema particularly is an example of how, from a small industry it becomes such a big phenomenon and industry because of this transition to sound. So the audience multiplies. Not only does the relationship change, the audience in fact multiplies.
The recording equipment was, Western equipment was the one with Atashiri Rani imported. And later Vestax, that became Vestax, which is one of the most important manufacturers of, and then RCA. These were the two major companies all over the world. And you have to give them credit. Like now when you give credits, you say Kodak. The stock uses Kodak, not Fuji or Agfa. So that is a manufacturing relationship with the, because as technology developed, the manufacturers came into the scene. And they wanted a space in the credit titles of the film. Till that time it was not. So sound is the beginning of manufacturers' entry into the credit titles of the film.
The Indian cinema has grown multiple folds and has evolved to where we are today, and is at present the world's largest film industry. In a country where the masses are deprived of means of public entertainment, cinema is doing well to bridge that gap.
Quite correctly we say, there is not one Indian cinema, there are many Indian cinemas.